Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing Becky. This was directed by Jonathan Malott and Kerry Uren and stars Lulu Wilson, Kevin James and Joel McHale. The film really focuses on Becky, played by Lulu Wilson. A young teenage girl who's very angry and frustrated and has suffered a loss and has really been affected by that and struggles to make sense of things, and her anger is the only thing that pushes her along. It really looks at how her father, Jeff, played by Joel McHale, picks her up. They end up going to their lake house to just sort of spend time together and to prepare her for the fact that her father is going to get remarried. And she's going to have another brother and a different sort of stepmother. And she struggles with this and she's angry about it and she doesn't want it to happen. She doesn't want things to change. She's still struggling with the tragedy she's suffered. And it's really about her trying to come to terms, I guess, with the way and her feelings upon that. But everything is turned upside down with the appearance of 4 convicts led by Kevin James's character, Dominic. They appear at the lake house. They're all searching for a key, this particular key with a symbol. We don't really know what the key's for or why it was hidden there, but they're really after it. And as Dominic looks for the key in its particular spot, it's disappeared, and he starts to question why. He starts to hold this family hostage and begins to wreak havoc on their lives, all in his search for the key. He will do everything in his power to achieve his goal, no matter what the consequences are. And the film then really sort of shifts and it becomes a battle of will, a cat and mouse game between Becky and Dominic. Dominic trying to retrieve the key and Becky trying to protect her family, her new family, and to stop this maniac from doing what he's doing. And it all leads to quite a surprising, shocking and very violent ending. This is a film I just sort of heard about and saw the trailer. I didn't know a lot going in. All I had heard about it was Lulu Wilson was in it and that Kevin James was playing something outside of his wheelhouse, something a bit more dramatic and dark than his basic comedy roots. So it kind of went in blind a little bit. I really wanted to like this film more than I did. I thought it was an interesting concept. I thought it could have been fun and entertaining. And it could have been a sort of very funny sort of film, but it just didn't quite get there for me. It didn't quite have those elements that I expected it to have. And I walked away a bit disappointed by it. And there was more things I disliked than I liked about it. But I'll start with the positives. I like it set at one sort of location. I like the sort of some of the camera shots, not all of them. I thought Kevin James was solid as Dominic. I didn't really buy him as a bad guy or a villain because I haven't seen him play dramatic roles like that before, so it sort of took me by surprise and I didn't quite buy him, even though he did give a solid performance. But I kept waiting for him to be funny and it just didn't get there for me, his performance. Some of the music choices are fantastic, especially when Becky sort of is standing up to them and taking control of the circumstances. The use of music in these scenes was really great. I liked it was sort of, some of the camera work was artistically shot and I kind of liked that. In a lot of ways it felt like a graphic novel and I thought it was based on one, but it wasn't, and I could really see this as a graphic novel and it could be really interesting in that medium. I liked a lot of the ideas and themes and things that we're talking about. But I think the best thing about the film was Lulu Wilson. She's really great here. She's come a long way since Annabelle Creation and Ouija Origins of Evil, and she's sort of growing up and we get to see her in a different way. And I think she's solid here. She gives a solid performance. She has some great moments in the film. She's sort of comical and quite disturbing, and there's some really great moments with her that I really thought she really shone in. One of my favourite moments of the film happens towards the end in the 3rd act, where Dominic's looking for her. So there's an altercation that happens outside at night time and he's yelling out looking for her. Then all of a sudden you just hear Becky singing and he travels to this fire pit where she's sitting in this chair and she's singing in this song. And the sequence here is fantastic. What she does in that scene is great. She really takes control of the circumstances she finds herself in. And it's just a really great and interesting scene. There's little bits and pieces like that throughout the film that I kind of didn't mind. And she does this poem thing. It's in the trailer, which I really liked. It's like, there once was this little girl with a curl in the middle of her forehead. When she was good, she was good. When she was bad, she was terrible. And I kind of like that. It adds a kind of an interesting element. Like, this is the moment she takes charge. I kind of like that. But that's all I really liked about the film. I found it kind of overly violent for no apparent reason. Violence in it is ridiculous and very realistic, and they linger on shots too long of people getting their faces cut off or run over by things or chopped up by things. Or there's a sequence involving an eyeball and Dominic, which is such a horrible scene to watch. But it just felt like they were just making it violent for violence sake. It didn't really feel like the violence was part of the story. They just wanted to be as graphic as possible to get the R rating, and I felt this was really, really disappointing. I felt that the motivations behind characters didn't quite make sense at all. There was little bits of things you could see why they're doing it, but just sort of why Dominic's after this key. We never find out at all in the whole film what the key is and what it represents. There's a moment where he's about to explain it and he doesn't get to do that, and I just feel, why set up this key and this whole talk of this key and then never explain the key at all? What's the purpose of it then? I just don't quite get it. And the other questions are, why was it hidden at this particular lake house? And why are they returning to this place and what the key represents? I found this so frustrating, and this was in the back of my mind the whole movie. The motivation of Becky going from this sort of frustrated and angsty teen to a really aggressive and violent character didn't make sense. It was too much of a leap. They never set this up at all. And there's a sequence at the beginning where we're introduced to Becky, which really shows that there is going to be no stakes for her character. And it just sort of felt disappointing that they did this. I just felt that it should have had a moment of where she was being violent or attacking or fighting with someone, which would make more sense of why she gets so aggressive later in the movie. But the biggest thing here, the biggest frustration I felt completely with this movie was the camera work. Like I said earlier, there were some shots I liked that were kind of interesting, but most of the camera work is handheld and really close up on the face. So when a character runs, you can't really see what's going on because the camera's shaking. It's not focusing on anything except the head, and it's just really frustrating to watch. The whole movie's like that. There isn't really real wide shots. We don't actually get to see what's going on at all. It's all intimate and close and tight. And I found it so frustrating that they did it like this because I couldn't see anything. And this only got worse as we got into the night stuff where they didn't put a light on at all. There was no use of lighting at all. And there's this whole sequence at the end of the film that's nearly complete darkness. There's flashes of light, and I guess they're going for a sort of a look and a feel because of the lighting. But there's this whole fight sequence that takes place that you see partly in silhouette, and then you see them fighting on the ground and you can't see anything. And there's so many sequences in this, you can't see anything. Like, you can get a Steadicam for Christ's sake. You can have those shots, but limit them or do them in a better way, and don't just have close-ups where we can't see actually what's going on. I was so frustrated with this throughout the whole film, and this part of it really was a real disappointment for me. This film had such potential. It could have been fun and interesting. They took away the humor. It could have been much more funny than it was, more dark humor, and it never really had that, and I felt that was really disappointing. And like I said, even though Lulu Wilson was really great, she didn't have a lot to work with. The character was kind of interesting and cool, but they never really established her. They never really put more into her for us to really get a sense of who she is. And that's how I felt throughout the film. I never really had a sense of any character. I never really cared about the characters, and there wasn't that much at stake. And I found this film overly frustrating and disappointing in many ways. Final thoughts. I think in a way, this film sort of looks at grief, the grieving process. And that's kind of what the Becky character feels like. And through the course of this film, she comes to terms with things. She expresses her stuff through violence, and just like there's a switch being flicked on that this film ultimately becomes her coping mechanism, her way of expressing how she thinks and feels, and how she's trying to come to terms with and move on in a different way. But that's all I can really draw from it. Maybe I'm giving the directors too much credit, but that's all I could sort of take from the film in the end. I'm going to give Becky 2.5 out of 5. Like I said, it was an interesting premise and it could have been really great. It just wasn't, didn't get there for me. I'm sure people are going to enjoy this, but I need more than just some action and violent moments and a bit of absurd humor. I need a story. I need something to connect to. I need characters to really follow and care about. And this film just didn't give me those things. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.